Welcome to this Maidenhead Development Management Committee on Thursday, the 19th of September 2024. My name is Councillor Sian Martin and I am chairing this meeting. This meeting is being held in person and via Zoom and streamed live to the public on YouTube. I remind all attendees that participation in the meeting indicates consent to the audio and video being streamed live and acknowledgement that after the meeting it will continue to be available in the public domain. Firstly, it would be useful if all committee members and officers could introduce themselves so that the public are aware who is in the meeting and the role they're undertaking. So I'm Councillor Martin. I'll go this side while they sort the tech out. So,
good evening, I'm Councillor Jack Douglas.
Hi, Councillor Gary Reeves, voting member of the panel and for Cox Green.
Hello, I'm Clive Baskerville. I'm substituting for Mandy Bra at today's meeting. I'm a member for Pinkley's Green.
Hi, I'm Gert Singh, Ward Councillor for St Mary's. Thank you.
Maureen Hunt, Councillor for Hully and the Walthams.
Councillor Helen Taylor, voting member of the panel.
Louise Reid, Deputy Head of Planning.
And Adrian Waite, Assistant Director of Planning.
Thank you. I request that meeting participants do not speak until I specifically invite you to do so. Once I've invited you to speak, before you do so, please state your name and the capacity in which you are speaking if appropriate. I will ask officers to speak at appropriate times. If any individual attempts to disrupt the meeting, I'm able to use my powers in the Constitution to adjourn the meeting or have the individual removed. We will now start with the agenda items. Firstly, do we have any apologies for absence?
Yes, Chair, we have 3 apologies tonight. So we have apologies from Councillor Bra, who is being substituted, as we've said, by Councillor Baskerville, and we also have apologies from Councillor Hill and Councillor Waters.
Thank you. Do we have any declarations of interest?
Thank you, Chair. I'm predetermined on the bridge clinic application, so I'll leave the room while they've been discussed.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yep. Yeah, likewise, predetermined on the bridge application, so I'll be leaving the room during that debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Singh. And agenda item number 3 is the minutes. Are we happy to approve the minutes of the meeting held on Thursday, the 18th of July, 2024? So, Councillor Hunt.
I think Adrian wants to say a few words.
Yeah, if it's okay, I was just going to come in to provide an explanation on a couple of them. Yeah, if that's okay.
Yes, go.
So, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to clarify just in public that 2 of the members who aren't present tonight, we as a council have a requirement that members receive annual training to sit on the committee. There was a training event held earlier in the year, but as with all these things, not everyone was able to attend, and as officers we haven't been able to set up a further session. So 2 of the members who aren't in attendance would have liked to been here, but weren't able to sit in accordance with the council's constitution. And I just wanted to clarify that training sessions have been set up, so it won't be an issue for any future committees. Every member who might need to sit will be trained before the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Adrian. So I'm going to have a little bit of a jig of the agenda. So as we have 2 items for the Bridge Clinic.
The minutes actually agreed.
Oh, okay.
I think the minutes were agreed.
No, that's fine then. So I'll move on to agenda item number 4, which is the full application for the Bridge Clinic, Bridgewater Lodge. And if I could hand over to Louise for the presentation. Thank you. Okay. Do you need some help? Apologies for the delay. We're just sorting out a technical issue. I think we're there now, so. Excellent. Right. It's all on screen now. I think Zoom's playing ball at the moment, so.
Good evening. Thank you for bearing with me. I will start with the first application, which is Bridge Clinic, Bridgewater Lodge, which is an application for change of use from medical clinic to a nursery. Both uses are in the current use class order as Class E. The proposal also includes a new hardstanding, access from Guards Club Road, 14 car parking spaces, cycle parking, external store and children's play area. I'll move forward onto the first slide. As you can see, the building is located here, close to the roundabout here, off the bridge area here. There are two roads that you can access the site from here, off the roundabout. You can also access onto the roundabout to turn right, or there's an alternative route that takes you on a left-bound route into Maidenhead. This is the proposal in terms of plan. We have here the main building, the opening up of the front gate and the front entrance, a rear play area, turn that off there, and 14 car parking spaces to the rear, one of which here would be a disabled parking space. There will be cycle provision in this location here and refuse storage here next to the main building. The access to the site, vehicle access, would be an in-out access point off Guards Club Road, and there's enough area within here to allow for drop-off and pick-up area. The area that's shaded here is walkways, and there would be entrances to the building both from the back here, through here, and at the front here. The proposed ground floor layout plan, as you can see, is existing in its last clinic use. It's been vacant for some time. You can see that there are a significant amount of partitions that would be removed for the proposed use, opening up the rooms so that they better reflect the original layout of the Grade 2 style listed building. And here we have the existing and proposed first floor plan. As you can see here, we have the entrance that would be opened up, and we have the layout again opened up compared with the existing partitions and so forth here. And this is the top floor. Again, the opening up of the rooms, and I'll move on to the next slide, roof plan. These are details of the cycle parking storage and the refuse storage area here. This slide, it shows that it's taken at the rear entrance area. We can see a disused access into the neighbouring site there, and we can see that the rear parking area here and here is very much not in great condition, and there's no formal parking layout. Again, more of the car parking area, and we can see here the rear of the building, and again here, and its relationship with the neighbouring site, which is in clinic use. Here we can see the rear of the properties. These are residential properties on Guards Club Road. And this is the front of the property. This is the front entrance that will be opened up through pedestrian and cycle access only. It won't be vehicular. The proposal is for a nursery that under normal circumstances would be permitted development under Class E, but in the original consent for the clinic that was granted in 2010, a condition was placed on it to limit it within the then D1 use class. Hence the reason why planning permission is required for the use rather than it being permitted under Class E, as it would be today. The proposal is for up to 126 children, and I would keep in mind that that is up to. It's very unlikely it would reach those numbers, and private nurseries such as this operate on staggered systems. So there isn't a peak arrival and pick-up time in the way that you get with schools. So there's not a big flood of incoming traffic. It will filter over a period of time, and that's reflected in the transport assessment. The applicant has also proposed to provide a travel plan before the use commences, and the travel plan is the subject of condition 7. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Louise. I have 2 speakers on each of the full and the variation. So what I'm going to do is firstly call Ian Wallace, please. So when you're ready, if you sit down and you press the right button. Yeah.
Might be the left.
Might be the left on yours, actually.
Might be the left button.
I can tell you when it's okay.
I'm speaking on behalf of the adjoining proprietors and the residents of Guards Club Road in objection to the proposals.
Thank you.
Okay. Right hand button. Sorry?
It's already considered as soon as you start talking about.
But there's a left hand button that's red. So press the right hand button. Okay. Right. Consultees' reports and the local residents' concerns urge you to refuse this application on health and safety grounds. The planners barely mention health and safety. In fact, that last report didn't mention it at all. The Environment Agency reminds you to consult with your emergency planners and the emergency services to confirm the adequacy of the evacuation proposals before making a decision on this application. You have not done this. 130 babies down a stair onto the A4 is the proposal. The Highways Development Report concludes, I read from it, it has not been demonstrated that safe and adequate access to and from the application site can be achieved for pedestrians and cyclists, nor for access to public transport or the key nearby residential areas. Neither has it been demonstrated that sufficient off-site highway works required to facilitate such access can be provided to ensure the nursery is not overwhelmingly made by private motor vehicles. The access proposal exhibits features which would result in conflicts between vehicles, cyclists and pedestrians, including small children, would not provide sufficient access and visibility between vehicles, cyclists and pedestrians, would not provide a safe, suitable, adequate and attractive route for all users as an alternative to travelling by car, and would reduce the safety of travel by non-car modes of travel to an unacceptable level. The proposal is therefore contrary to local plan policies IF1, IF2, QP3, and RBM's local transport plan supported by NPPF, paragraphs 108, 112, 114, 115, 116 and 117. Given the impact, we think there will be public outrage if you grant permission, especially in the shadow of the Grenfell Tower report. The planners alter the findings of the statutory reports, viz.
Minute remaining.
Highways Authority, no objection. I counted 97 breaches in the highway report, which the applicant refused to address. The highways report actually says refuse. The planners prefer to rely on the applicant's advice. I quote, based on information provided by the applicant, the proposed use would generate only 16 extra vehicle movements in the morning peak and 6 in the afternoon peak. The Highways Department disagrees with everything in the applicant's report. I quote, the proposal as it stands would naturally result in everyone, including staff members, driving to the site. That's 126 parents and 30 part-time staff arriving and leaving at peak hours. That's potentially 600 extra vehicle movements per day. The planning report repeatedly alters and obscures the misgivings of your statutory consultees. They show extreme bias towards the approval at the expense of public safety. You would almost think that their pensions depended upon it. Councillors, how many small children would you like to see maimed or killed before you consider this proposal an extreme highways safety risk? Thank you.
Thank you. Right on time. Can I next bring in Neil Rowley, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, councillors. My name is Neil Rowley. I'm a planning consultant on behalf of the applicant.
Thank you. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
First thing to say is there's a real need for this development, and that's not just us saying that. Your early years team have confirmed that there's a need for more childcare places in Maidenhead. This matches our own experience. We have a national nursery operator ready to take on this nursery. They'll provide flexible childcare and a range of jobs for local people. This is a listed building and we need to find a use for it. The nursery use is entirely appropriate and we've already been granted listed building consent, which will reassure you that there are no issues bringing this use into a listed building. The old healthcare use is gone. The building's been vacant for a little while now. And the future of listed buildings is best cared for when we can find a use for them. And we have been around this building, we've made very sure that a nursery use would be an excellent use to ensure the long-term maintenance of this building. The amenity issues are really not that significant. These are young, very young preschool children. You won't be able to really hear them. The noise won't be intrusive. They'll of course be supervised at all times, as young children always are, and the noise and activity will stop at evenings and weekends. The building benefits from a large car park, if you've seen, and one addition I would make is there's also a side access from the front, which means that the nursery can be accessed with no steps. Our nursery operator is very happy with the number of car parking spaces, and they operate many nurseries with far fewer spaces. The number of cars spoken about simply isn't going to happen. Nursery children arrive at staggered drop-offs in the morning and leave staggered in the afternoons. There's not a start like a school day. They'll arrive gradually through the morning. There'll be cars coming and going, but nothing that's not expected for a commercial building in an edge of town centre area. We agree with your highways officer. I think the highways made a further note following what you've heard from the objectors, saying that they had no objection, and we're absolutely happy, and the nursery operator is very happy with what's proposed. In short, as I say, there's a real need for this development. It's a listed building. We need to find use for that, and this is a good one. And the traffic issues that have been spoken about, there's no chance of people walking along Garscrud Road. Anyone walking to the site will go in the front entrance directly off the road. To not do so would be strange. So we can absolutely recommend this application to you. I hope you're able to secure some more childcare places, some more jobs, and a good use for a listed building. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. If I could open this one up to the floor. Does anyone want to speak on this application? Councillor Reeves, please.
Okay. There's a couple of things that I need to contemplate around this. The first thing is the outside play area that's going to be built right behind the existing residence properties and the townhouses. They have, as I understand it, balconies as well. So the noise from there will be direct into their property as they back onto it. I don't understand the public speaker on behalf of the applicant saying that noise, because they're young babies, is actually not that much. I don't know if you've ever actually been near a baby when they've been crying. It's extremely high pitched. It is and can be very grating on people. I know that from experience because of a nursery within Cox Green, where we've had residents complaining constantly about the issue with younger children screaming, crying, and quite often inconsolable compared to actually school-age children, where yes, they might be loud playing, but you can rationalize with them, you can talk to them, whereas actually babies and very young children, that is not the case. So I don't accept that as a valid reason to actually discount the noise consideration from the play area. And so that's something that I'm going to have to take into account, because that will impact the use of the residence property that will actually back straight onto that play area. There's also, I looked in here and considered the highways concerns. They've raised all their they raised major concerns about this. Then it was on, what I can see is there is a response to the highways from the applicant, talking about those concerns. The dates are out of order, but actually looking at the letters, so it was it looks like the highway comments were made after the applicant, but actually when I read the letter, they're in reverse. So the applicant has come back. But what I haven't then seen is the highways, making a subsequent comment to the applicant's statement. All I see is no objection based on condition. And when I look in the conditions, one of the statements that was made on behalf of the applicant on the 18th of July, they talked about, we have no objection to the imposition of a condition requiring a car park layout plan to be submitted. The attached response from TTP includes an example layer to allow for 20 spaces. This could include a delineated pedestrian footway and zone. But when I looked at the condition, it doesn't mention anything about 20, and there are 20 staff. They also talk about many nursery staff are young and on relatively low salaries. In the experience of our nursery operator, only a small proportion of staff drive to work. I think that's that comment doesn't really take into account. There are very cheap cars that you can buy, and you can't just presume that they're not going to drive in. And I think that's quite a broad assumption that they're making there. So I'm not sure I understand why we haven't taken the 20 car parking spaces into consideration as a condition. It doesn't mention that at all. It just says that there'll be condition on a plan. So I have a concern about that I'd like to find out more about, please.
I think Adrian wanted to say a few words on what you've just spoken about.
Yes, I just wanted to come in briefly on the highways matter. So as you've correctly mentioned, Councillor Reeves, there is an issue with the dating on the document management system, but there is also an email from the highways team that I have open in front of me that doesn't appear to be appearing on public access for some reason due to coding. So there was an initial objection from the highways team, which you will have seen on the 5th of July. Then there was a response from the applicant setting out their responses to things. It clarified some of the data, provided additional plans and commentary. And then there was a subsequent email to the case officer from the highways officer confirming that based on the clarification, he no longer had concerns because the site was accessible by foot, and clarifying that he didn't consider there would be any severe impacts as classified under the MPPF. So effectively saying no objections in highways terms. So I apologise that that isn't on the public. I don't know why it hasn't ended up on the DMS, but I can confirm that there was an email from the highways officer confirming that the objection would be removed subject to the conditions.
Can I bring in Councillor Reeves again, please?
So as a matter of a procedure, does that document subsequently go on to the public site after this meeting, or is this recorded meeting that, because I think it would be, the public should have a right to see it, no?
I will look into that and make sure it is available on the public website. I think the issue is it was sent as an email rather than as a response. So something has gone, it hasn't been uploaded onto the public side of the file for some reason. So I will resolve that so it can be seen by the public. If people do want to see it, I can send it to Louise and we can put it on the screen behind me. But ultimately, it is what is accurately set out in the officer's report, which is that there's no objection from the highways officer subject to conditions.
So to clarify then, the report is actually accurate, it's just the background.
Yeah, the information that members have been provided in the report with regard
So what
to
we're voting on today
is accurate.
Okay. Do I have any other speakers on this item? Councillor Reeves, was that a follow-up on because I've got Councillor Hunt. Yeah, I've got Councillor Hunt as well. Is it a follow-up on? Yeah, so it's on a separate thing. So if I could bring in Councillor Hunt, then I'll go back to you, Councillor Reeves.
Yeah, thank you. I'm a bit concerned about what Councillor Reeves brought up about the highways report, and that does definitely need to be in the public domain. But I'm also concerned that there's 126 possible places on this site for children of all different ages. I would imagine there's an awful lot of parents who will need to use this place for their children once they go to work. And it will be a drop-off and a pick-up. Now, when you're talking about youngsters, it's very difficult to drop off. In fact, you don't tend to drop off in nurseries that I know. You tend to hand them over. You can't just let them go out the car. Half the children can't even walk anyway that will be going there. With 126, bearing in mind it will be at staged times that these people will be arriving, but with 126 stage times, say minus several who don't want the morning and just the afternoon, you still have the full majority in the morning. And my concern is the backlog on Horse Guards Road. You know, with the cars all queuing up to take their children into this place. And parents are very careful of their children. They want to make sure that they're settled. They don't just hand them over, not at this young age. And they really want to make sure that they're settled. So it's not going to be a quick, here you are, I'm off. They will want to say goodbye to the little ones and have a lovely day. And, you know, I'm thinking of you, etc., etc. And I am concerned of the backlog and the queuing on this Horse Guards Parade, especially as it's so close to the roundabout. Perhaps our officers could come back.
Councillor Reeves, did you want to come in now about the parking? So it's a similar issue, highways, before I bring in Adrian.
Yeah, so, and just to reiterate what I was saying, the TTP consulting response, which was their transport response, sets out a new plan, which I see, adds additional car parking spaces up to 20, including ones down the side, which is the proposed two-way in out. So what I'm asking is, can we not have that as part of the condition? Because they've submitted that as a rationale for meeting the requirements of the parking, you know, or the parking allocation. It just says a proposed plan. Well, that doesn't give me any, it could be a proposed plan for, they could revise it to only 10 parking spaces. That's a proposed, you know, plan. I would feel more comfortable if there was a specific number of parking spaces that they should be allocating within that proposed plan.
Yes, I
Madam
think.
Chairman, before Adrian begins, can I just come back on that? Because there is going to be approximately 20 to 30 staff for a start, and there's not that many car parking spaces at all, bearing in mind some are part-time, so they won't be. So would that impinge on the condition? And that just might be something to think about. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. Adrian?
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I think what the officer has done has put on a fairly generic condition, which we would put on in a lot of instances, which requires the submission of a car parking allocation and management plan showing how the parking facilities will be allocated and managed. So if members are of the view that it does need to be a parking management plan that shows 20 car parking spaces, we could simply insert the wording to clarify the number of car parking spaces into that proposed condition. I don't think it's anything untoward. The officers just put on a fairly standard wording and it could be easily amended to pick up that issue, Councillor Rees.
Thank you, Adrian. Do you have any other speakers on this one?
So, I mean, I've listened to what people have said so far, and I think I've got obviously reservations about health and safety and parking and myself. As we've said, or the people have already said, we're dealing with very young children here. We're not dealing with people that are probably conversant with road safety issues. So they're relying on their parents to probably guide them. And you know, they can easily get sometimes, you know, with traffic and things going on, it's easy for them to get detached, maybe. And I'm just worried about the closeness to the A4 and before they get into the building. But also, this 126 children, that's a lot of children. Now, I know they're going to be staggered or staged according to the what we've heard, but it's still a lot of people going in and out of the site. I'm just got questions about the safety of people going in and out and whether there's enough space for all that to happen. I'd be interested in what the officers have to say on that.
Thank you, Councillor Baskerville. I think Adrian wanted to come in on the point about, oh, Louise. Sorry, apologies, Louise.
Yes, thank you. I think what's worth keeping in mind, this is, I'm sort of responding to your query about the drop-off times and pick-up times and so on. And I think really what we need to keep in mind here is that we do have a travel plan here. We do have in the conditions, and there is a condition about how the management of the car park at the back will be used. Keep in mind that that car park area is quite big. It's quite a big space and take turning vehicles and so forth. But on top of that, as you've already mentioned, the nature of nurseries, private nurseries such as this, is there is a staggered drop-off. And although there is a limit number of 126 children, there are other regulations that run alongside this in terms of how the uses are controlled, not least the Ofsted regulations around the use, which will require a certain amount of space per child, both internally and externally, depending on age groups and so on. So in the sense the number is 126, as we've said before, it's likely to be lower than that. And the nature of the use is that it's staggered throughout the day. And coming back to the travel plan, keep in mind with the travel plan, that's to actively encourage the parents and children to arrive by sustainable means of transport. It's a highly sustainable location. It is near to train stations, bus routes and so on. And the travel plan will work both with the employees and the parents to use more, to come on foot or to use public transport, or even probably not so suitable for small children is cycling, but there are facilities that you can buy that enable that to happen. So coming back to the arrival times, they're very phased, and we have, within the conditions, put in measures to be able to pin that down in detail. I hope that clarifies the point for you.
Thank you, Liz. You done a follow-up point, Councillor Baskerville, on that?
Well, I think it partially does, but there's still a worry about, this belief that people are going to be coming in on foot. I mean, if a large amount of them are coming from sort of the Farthingales area, and a lot of the people are coming from there, then that might be a point in that favour. But I think, I don't know if you can agree with this or can deny it, that the Maidenhead has got one of the highest instances of car use in the country. I mean, it's in the top 10, I think. And people are used to using their cars. I think it's all very well saying, use buses, use this and use that. But Maidenhead area hasn't got that very good links with buses generally. And because people just don't use them as much as they used to. And people do tend to use cars. And it sounds more of a wishful thinking rather than something that you can actually impose on people. People say, you should be walking. Well, a lot of people should be walking, and a lot of people should be cycling and that. But these are young children, and I'm just wondering if that is something that has been factored into the thinking about this.
If I bring in quickly, Adrian, and then I'll go to Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I have to highlight on parking and transport movements is we have to base decisions on evidence and data and our own experience and judgments as well. The evidence and data we have before us is presented in the applicant's updated transport assessment, which is based on TRICS data for nurseries of similar sizes and locations, and is the industry standard methodology of how you work out what the likely number of vehicles arising from a use are. And that table shows, for example, there's likely to be 35 two-way movements between 8 AM and 9 PM. Personally, I spend most of my life dropping children off at nurseries and also schools, which are very different to nurseries. And I can certainly say from personal experience, it is very different to the school gate drop-off that you get at a primary school, for example, where every parent and child has to drop off their child at 8:45, and it is chaos at schools. But nurseries are very different to that. Most parents are trying to avoid those times, drop off earlier, later, working part-time. Mondays and Fridays in particular tend to be a lot quieter than the 3 days in the middle of the week. So I think we've got data that's based on an industry standard methodology to assess the likely trip generation. Certainly my personal experience of dropping off at nursery would indicate that's likely to be correct, or certainly isn't wildly inaccurate. But obviously it's for members to take a view on it based on your own experience and the evidence before you.
Thank you, Adrian. Can I bring in Councillor Taylor, please?
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of questions and observations. I mean, nurseries are vastly different to schools. nurseries like Fort Knox, you're not going to have toddlers running around in a car park. However, looking at the plan for the car park, I wonder, might sound like a stupid question, but obviously if you're dropping off young children in car seats, you're going to need wider access for doors, etc. Is that something that we can condition into the parking stroke travel plan? Because that needs to be taken into account in that it takes a lot longer to get a baby and a small child out of the car than, say, an 8-year-old. So Ofsted obviously put ratios on how many children can be with one member of staff. So that is going to affect their time staggering. So there's not really anything we can do about that. That's set by Ofsted. But I just think that needs to be something that's in people's minds. The gentleman that spoke in objection mentioned the health and safety grounds and about evacuation procedures. Now, that's not something that we can get involved in. If that's down to Ofsted and whoever's running the establishment, is it not?
Could you confirm that, Louise, actually? And there's a good point actually as well about the car parking with wider spaces. I don't know if they've been planned as standard as well.
I think the car parking spaces that have been provided as standard, they do highlight that there is a disabled parking space proposed, but I understand what you mean in terms of parent parking spaces that you get in some of the car parks and supermarkets and so on, being a bit wider to allow the doors to open to get to children out of car seats. But no, the spaces that are proposed as standard, but there's still a condition requirement to put the management plan in, which is something we mentioned earlier. Coming back to health and safety, there's separate legislation that covers that. And furthermore, it would get picked up in part by Ofsted requirements. I mean, Ofsted requirements, I know they involve certain square meterage per child, both indoors and out, and different amounts for the age of the children. So they're pretty tight regulations, but on top of that, health and safety is picked up by separate legislation to planning. So it's not a planning matter per se.
And just to pick up a bit further on the point about health and safety, I believe the point that the speaker was picking up on was that the Environment Agency had removed their objection from flood risk, and they had put in the letter what is a fairly standard caveat from the Environment Agency because of the way flood planning is dealt with, in that they are responsible for certain aspects and then the local authority is responsible for other aspects. But I mean, in terms of of site evacuation, in terms of flood risk, the sorts of sites that tend to be of concern are actually residential dwellings or care homes or things like that, where people are permanently in the site and can't move. Something like a children's day nursery, if there was a flood warning or a high risk of flooding, I am pretty certain that the nursery operators would simply take the call that they weren't going to open the nursery that day and would contact the parents, and that the site wouldn't actually be open if there was a high risk of flooding on a particular day, because that is the best way to manage the risk, and that is how I'd expect them to proceed. It's not a use. Where we get really concerned about these things is, for example, care homes where people are residents and stuck, and if there were a flood event, they would have to be evacuated, not a daytime nursery where it's open for the day and can easily close down if there's a risk of an event.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor, were you following up on your points before I bring in?
I just had another point. I turned my microphone off too quickly.
Sorry.
I had another point to make.
Separate from what we're discussing. Are you happy with that?
You're good.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, the only other thing I was going to say is obviously it's very difficult for highways to make a report that everyone's going to agree with. Now, me personally, I don't think their estimates are accurate. To me, when my daughter was younger, the safest way for me to get her to school was in a car. I would not have been wanting to walk in a pram down a pavement with
shall we say, other road users that are trying to get somewhere the fastest way possible. So I think it's very difficult with schools and nurseries to be able to make a statement on what they expect the car journeys to be, because we all know how we think, and it's been proven with other schools that even if people can walk, they don't, because for various reasons. And I think that the highways, the traffic movements do concern me, because it is quite a tight space. It is right on the roundabout, it's right on the bridge, which is a major intersection, and we all know, anyone that drives in Maidenhead knows that bridge is, sometimes you don't want to be on that road, because once it gets to a standstill, that's it, you're there for quite some time, shall we say. So that does worry me. In the back of my mind, I'm more concerned about how the traffic is going to get in and out of that, and the effect it's going to have on the traffic already on the A4. And it won't take much on that junction and on that road for there to be quite an issue, if that makes sense. If it was like somewhere like, I don't know, say Oldfield School, that's on like, the Bray Road where it's a straight open road, I don't think in my head I'd be as concerned, but because of where it is on that junction, it is quite worrying to me.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. I think that's a very good point. So also people going onward journeys to work, etc. It might be interesting to know how actually they calculate those figures. Have you got how the highways calculate the estimated numbers?
I mean, effectively, the TRIX database is a fairly large national database where actual data from operational sites is inputted into that database. And then it's searched by highways consultants for sites of a similar size and a similar location. So the data does come from real world data that's put into it based on comparable sites. Obviously, there's a degree of judgment for highways engineers about which sites are the most comparable in doing that exercise, but that's how the system works.
Thank you. Can I bring in Councillor Hunt, please?
Our officers just mentioned comparable sites, but this is a dead end. So I think there's very few comparable sites for a nursery that are in a dead end with 126 children. Much has been said about nurseries, etc. Well, as a grandmother, I'm still doing nursery duty, preschool duty, and school duty. So I'm very aware of how these things run. I am very, very concerned about the traffic. I'm really concerned also, number 5, to observe, perform and comply with the provision of the travel plan and subsequent travel plan as may be amended by the developer / applicant and approved by the council in writing from time to time. Quite frankly, I think this application is unknown with 126 children. Where it's placed, it's in a dead end with the concern and the not knowing of the traffic generation, although they're saying, no, it's going to be fine. We all know, everyone who lives in Maidenhead, the backlog in that area is humongous on the A4. And it's to be avoided if you can. So I think there's a lot of unknowns here. I'm not comfortable with going forward on this, and I would move to refuse it. Thank you.
Just to clarify, you're making a proposal for motion there?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we'd have to use obviously Helena is online, we can bring Helena in.
Yeah.
Obviously with any.
Good to speak, yeah.
So we do have our legal on standby that's online. I can bring Helena in, but with regards to any refusal, obviously would have to have a legal reason as well with regards to the refusal. We wouldn't be able to be refusing of the application, like I say, would have to come with a legal reason as well, why the refusal and going against the officer recommendation.
I'm not quite with you on this. If I have, and there has been enough reasons for refusal been pointed out, and I've just confirmed some of them, for refusals, why are you now bringing in a legal officer? I've never heard of that before. I've been here 17 years.
So, sorry, Councillor Hunt, I think what Mike is trying to say is that we need to have clearly set out what the reason for refusal would be. So would it be related? I would sense, based on what you were saying, that it would be a reason related to concerns about either traffic or highway safety. But I think what Mike is trying to say is we need to know what the actual motion for the reason for refusal is in plain English.
Certainly highway safety. That's the main thing.
That's how can I just ask you to press the button so everyone can hear you? That's right, John.
Sorry about that, Boss. All right, I wasn't before. Well, that would certainly be one of the reasons. I'm sure the residents would like noise to come into that, because they are overlooking, very close overlooking. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. Councillor Reeves, did you want to say something?
So when I look through the plan, I've mentioned about the noise and about the issues around it, obviously backing into there. And I made my observation about the applicant's dismissal of the level of noise that would be actually experienced from young babies or very young children. And I think I've spoken enough about that anyway earlier on, and why I would be considering that in some of my thought process. The only matters where it seems to deal with that in the report is under 1019 and 1020. And in there it sets out that the reliance is on the proposed nursery being open 51 weeks of the year, so 1 week off. Okay, that's great. I wonder when that week will be. And doesn't seem like quite a much of a break. Then also operating between the hours of 7:30 in the morning and 6:30 in the evening, but during weekdays only. So I think that would obviously benefit the residents from the point of view of having the weekend to be able to have enjoyment of their garden area, or without the noise. There's an existing non-residential use at the site, but however that doesn't really generate and wouldn't have generated much noise for them. And its proposal of 126 students, which wouldn't all use an outside play area at once. And as I understand, there's an Ofsted control over the amount that are allowed out. And then it goes on to talk about that the hours of operation proposed is not considered that the proposal would result in unacceptable harm to the amenities, and that a condition is recommended to secure the proposed operating hours and other issues of noise and nuisance will be controlled by environmental protection legislation. So I get about the environmental protection legislation, and that can obviously be raised, and then they can have some sort of controls levied against the nursery if it becomes unbearable for the residents. But it mentioned about a condition on securing the proposed operating hours, and also summarised in 10.2, subject to recommended condition to control the hours of operation. It would not, I can't see that in the conditions. So I read through every single condition under section 13. And in section 13, there's no mention of controlled hours, because section 13 is conditions recommended for inclusion if permission is granted. So can you please explain where those conditions have been set out clearly to restrict the hours of operation? And I say that because I've seen, and it's been experienced before with other nurseries in Maidenhead, that they fluctuate their operating hours. And there was one particular nursery that extended their hours to earlier in the morning, accepted deliveries earlier in the morning, so the residents were bothered by additional noise that wasn't considered in the original planning application. And I don't want this to be the occasion where we also fall under that particular shortfall.
I'll bring you in, Adrian.
Thank you. It's condition 9, but I will acknowledge there appears to be an issue with the formatting of the report. So the space between condition 8 and condition 9 is missing. So it isn't as clear as it should be that it's a separate condition, but it is there.
The use hereby permit shall only operate. Okay, I can see it now because it bled into 8. I didn't actually see, and so that wasn't obvious as a separate condition. So yeah, I can now see that that's the case. And at no time on Saturdays, Sundays, public and bank holidays. Is there also any option for being able to control the use of the outside play area?
So if I come in on this one, the test of conditions is that if we're imposing conditions, they have to meet the 6 tests for a planning condition, and that includes matters such as them being enforceable, reasonable, etc., etc. Now, the difficulty is nurseries do manage a lot of children where they've got an outdoor space and various classes. They will be, for example, moving different classes into those spaces depending on certain requirements and needs within the day. And while we know that there will never be 126 children out there, there will only be a much smaller number than that. Indeed, half of them, a number of the rooms are baby rooms, and they certainly won't be out there. What we can't do is impose a condition that tries to get us into the heart of managing something that ultimately the nursery needs to manage for themselves, because that just won't be practical. You know, I can't check if the nursery is managing things in a certain way, and equally it wouldn't be appropriate if there was an operational reason to do something slightly different for the well-being of the children, to have something that would make that unacceptable. And I think trying to put a condition like that on, we're not going to be able to enforce it, and I think that would probably be disingenuous to the residents to put something on that we know we're not actually going to be able to monitor or enforce in the background. That would be the reason we wouldn't recommend something like that.
So from taking that, I understand what you're saying about not being able to impose that because of like operational, it could be health and safety issues. There could be a lot of reasons they have to operate. And are we then, what you're saying is from that regard, because it's very long, from 7:30 to 6:30, we're reliant on, or the residents will be reliant on the environmental protection and the noise abatement enforcement that's available. Is that correct?
Yes, I mean, if there were a noise issue that was to the extent that it warranted intervention from environmental protection, yes. I mean, what I would say is that generally in planning terms, the noise sensitive hours have always been considered to be the hours between 11 PM and 7 AM, which obviously are the times that the nursery wouldn't be open. So generally it's not open at the times that planning normally considers to be the noise sensitive hours.
Okay.
Thank you. Do we have any other speakers on this? We have one motion on the table so far with no seconder. Anyone else want to say anything? It's committee members, I'm afraid. It's committee members that speak.
Second, Councillor Hunt's motion. Yeah.
So I do have a motion written out. I can read it out to clarify to make sure Councillor Hunt is happy with the motion as well. So obviously I have a motion on the table to refuse planning permission for traffic and high safety concerns and noise disruption to adjacent residents as a result of the outside playing area. Are you happy with that motion, Councillor Hunt?
Is the highways and safety, are you going to elaborate on that, or is that the only thing that you're putting in as a reason for the panel, if it goes ahead on the motion? Is that the only reason?
They're the ones at the moment.
Are you putting in that we feel because it's a cul-de-sac, because of the amount of cars, we're concerned because it's unquantified of the amount of cars that will be waiting and queuing on Horse Guards Road?
Yeah, so if I can clarify, Councillor Hunt, if there's a reason for refusal, the reason for refusals, as you've seen many examples, tend to be fairly succinct and to the point. So the reason for refusal highlights the planning harm that the members feeling exists and warrants refusal. So in this case, for example, the concern you've expressed is that you're concerned about traffic impacts and highway safety arising from the use. The other factors, the detail of that wouldn't feature in the actual reason for refusal, but they would be what people would look at the debate and the minutes of the debate to get to the heart of the concerns of members. So, because otherwise, as you can appreciate, you'd end up putting most of the debate tonight in the reason for refusal, which isn't practical. So they just focus on the key planning harms that are the reasons members feel are significant enough to warrant refusal.
Right. And the noise issue, would this be highlighted that it's because it's so adjacent to these houses?
So I can read the motion again. So it was to refuse plan permission for the traffic and highway safety concerns and noise disruption to adjacent residents as a result of the outside play area.
Is that okay with you, Clive?
Do we have any more speakers on this one before we go to vote?
Yeah, I've just been doing some maths around the applicant's transport statement. They stating that arrivals, so when we looked at the arrival statement as well at the highest of 25 and departures, they mentioned that so between 7 and 10 o'clock we'd have arrivals in totaling 36, 42 and departures would only amount to 24. I've tried to add that up. I'm assuming that then equates to 18 staff that have basically stayed. So they definitely need 20 car parking spaces. I can tell you that by my calculations, because if they haven't departed by 10 o'clock, then they have to have been parked. And therefore, they have to have the 20 parking spaces. That's categoric. So the condition that has to be in there is definitely about the 20 car parking spaces, because that's 18 cars trying to park in that area, and the other cars would potentially block the in-out traffic flow. And then, so that then only leaves 17, a total, I've worked it out, 17 cars dropping off and leaving. And we're talking about then therefore probably one child, there might be 2 children, you know, they might put 2 in nursery if they were born very close together. But if we average it even at 1.5, that's still only like about 25 children dropped off between the hours of 7 and 10. And then it goes very, very quiet for most of the day until the pickup time. To me, just the evidence that they're presenting back to us, which is what we were told to look at, evidence. And the evidence that the Assistant Director of Planning was saying was given by the applicant. I'm looking at the evidence that the applicant has given on transport movement, because that's what we have to base it on. Not highways haven't come back and done their own assessment or evaluation. I've done an evaluation, and to me that just seems like it's very short on calculation. I mean, how are all the other children getting there? I understand some might walk, but I can tell you the affordability of nurseries now means that most parents are both working, you know, and both working parents have to get to work. And so therefore, they'll be dropping them off and heading off to work. They're not dropping off and taking a nice leisurely stroll back to their house to then get in their car to then drive off to work. Maybe they work from home. Some of us, I get to work from home 2 days a week. And there is this kind of mixed, you know, home working and office working. And so on those days, maybe they can. But to me, it's just, we need a robust plan. We're approving something on the basis of the plan given to us here, that's going to be a robust future plan for the arrival and departures. And that calculation of those movements would be 4 minutes per drop off. And that's pretty quick. And to turn around your car, to get there, drop them off, you know, get out, take them out the car seat and get out, hand them over, and then get back in and turn around and then come back out. And I've seen this before with other schools where there's a pinch point, like Manor Green School, if you take that as an example, it flowed out onto, and Councillor Hunt will know about this issue, it was a long running issue, out onto Cannon Lane, because they had a pinch point of going through an entrance gate and going in and out. And looking at their plan as well for these 20 car parking spaces, there's a passing place. So to me, in between two car parking spaces on the two-way in and out, why have you got a passing place if cars can go two ways? It doesn't, I don't know, logically, why do you even need a passing place? To me, that means that they think that you can't get two cars in and out easily without maybe hitting wing mirrors or causing issues. I don't know how big these cars are, but just under 5.5 meters, you know, range, you know, whatever. The car's quite big nowadays. SUVs are very popular for driving and dropping off children. So it's just, I wanted to take the opportunity to talk through that, because that is the evidence we were asked to think about when it came to the transport plan. So I wanted to just highlight that before the members voted. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. Does anyone else want to say anything before we go ahead and vote? No speakers. Did you want to?
So let's redo motion one last time. So we have a motion on the table proposed by Councillor Hunt, seconded by Councillor Baskerville, to refuse planning permission due to traffic and highway safety concerns and noise disruption to adjacent residents as a result of the outside play area. I'll take a named vote whether you are for refusal, against refusal, or abstaining from the vote. Councillor Baskerville. Councillor Hunt. Councillor Martin. Councillor Reeves. Councillor Taylor. That is unanimous, Chair. The motion carries and planning permission is refused.
Thank you, Mikey. We do actually have another application on this one as well. It is the variation, where I've moved the agenda around. And I'm just going to hand over to Louise to have a short intro on this, because it does vary from the full application that we've already heard. So whenever you're ready, Louise. Thank you, everyone. If you could take your seats again, I will hand over to. It's still not doing it, Louise? Paused. It's showing on yours, okay?
So she paused on mine, it just says she's trying to share her screen.
Oh.
Yeah, you can go.
That we can put it on yours. I've never seen it do that before. Thank you, Louise. Whenever you're ready, if everyone could.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Silence by Louise. Does the intro about the second item.
The second item, again, is Bridge Clinic, Bridgewater Lodge. So it's the same site. However, this application is an application to vary a condition under the application from 2010. So application 10-02364. It refers to condition 2, which at that time restricted the use to class D1, which is medical and health purposes only. Please keep in mind that the current position with the current use classes, both medical use of this type and nurseries would all fall under class E. So under the current circumstances, they would not need to apply for planning permission to change the use because it would be permitted development under class E. However, what we need to look at with this particular application is what the condition says and the justification for it. And the condition is just removing the right to change out of class D1 in 2010 into other uses that were within that class at that time. That use obviously has been superseded by class E. The justification for that limitation was in the interest of residential amenity and to accord with the terms of the application as amended. Since the time that this was given permission, we of course have a new borough local plan. We have the MPPF, which has gone through multiple revisions. So the policy circumstances are different, as is the use class order itself. Having studied the report that went with this application back in 2010, there doesn't appear to be any reference within the report to why this condition was added. And as my colleague mentioned with regard to the previous application, when a condition is imposed, you have to ensure that it meets the tests. So it has to be reasonable and enforceable. And for that to happen, you have to understand the context in which it was imposed. Given the report doesn't clarify that point, it's very difficult for us to understand the reason it was imposed in the first place. Hence the reason the application to remove it. So if the condition is removed, then the use will fall within class E of the current use classes order. So I hope that clarifies things, but I can run through the presentation, but in effect, that's what this application is seeking. Thank you.
Thank you, Louise. And before I open this up to the floor, there are 2 speakers again on this one. So firstly, can I bring forward Ian Wallace, please?
Chair, I think of point of order I'd like to mention at the end of my presentation, but unfortunately we'll go over the 3 minutes. It's a very important issue. Am I allowed to do that? Or?
Everyone has the same amount of time to speak,
yes,
which is 3 minutes, I'm afraid.
Okay.
So
it's a matter of pecuniary interest, but
Normally you would apply in advance, should you wish to speak longer than the 3 minutes.
In advance of what? Now?
Well, yeah, in advance of, like, you know, with good notice, so, but it is 3 minutes.
I'll leave it up to you to decide whether I can do that or not.
As soon as everybody's been allocated the same time slot, we'll leave it to the 3 minutes for this one.
Okay.
Thank you.
This application is the same site and the same contextual restraints, health and safety. The removal of condition 2 opens up the site development for not just a nursery, but also the myriad commercial uses contained within use class E. This time, however, there'll be no need to apply for planning permission. All the uses will have permitted development rights. There'll be no oversight of the consequences that any of the uses or their operations will bring. The retention of condition 2 does not prevent any other uses. It legitimately requires the submission of a full planning permission. In no circumstances whatsoever do the commercial interests of the United Kingdom outweigh public safety of its people. We've already seen the consequences brought to light through the nursery application on highways, flood, and residential amenity. None of these would have come to light were it not for the full planning application. You will be abrogating the public's right to health and safety if you permit this application. The planning report manifestly obscures all of those concerns. On page 57, it repeats the public comments from the change of use application without introducing the new public concerns raised in the variation application. In condition 2, it explains the reason for the condition as in the interests of residential amenity and to accord with the terms of the application as amended. The Code of Practice for Planning Probity, clause 13, recommends reviewing past decisions and its outcomes. This planning report says nothing found. However, if you read the past decisions relating to this site, all is made clear. In 2007, the LPA is adamant that intensification of the use of this site is not possible due to the inadequacy of the access roads and the junctions with the A4. A conditioned permission for medical clinic was granted on the basis that occupants of the site will be, what do you keep interrupting for? Occupancy of the site will be very low. The service road junction with Guards Club Road will be gated and operational detail provided so as to limit access to service vehicles only. The gates of 156 Bridge Road to be widened to permit vehicular access to 156 and 160 Bridge Road. A section 278 agreement to install a pelican crossing across Bridge Road and highway improvements. In 2010, a further conditional approval was sought and obtained to allow Guards Club Road access to the Guards Club Road, with the proviso the interconnecting gates be permanently closed in the interests of highway safety. Condition 2 was introduced to limit the use to medical clinic only, and the 2002 low occupancy permission was cross-referenced. It's ironic that this application and the previous change of use application now attract a total of 18 conditions. They are mostly weak and do not pass the 6 tests, all to remove one simple 6-test compliant, brief and effective condition 2 that ensures the borough can operate safely. On the matter of pecuniary interest,
In your time.
the applicant is a major pension fund provider for a local government. These are local voting for their own home. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I call Neil? Can I call Neil Rowley, please?
Thank you very much, councillors. We've listened to obviously the debate and the other discussions. The issue we have is we have a listed building that has been vacant now for some years, and as planning committee and planners, we want to find a use for listed buildings. We don't want them to fall into disrepair because they're not used, and the only real way of keeping a listed building safe is to use it, to keep it warm, to keep people in it, to make sure people look after it, make sure people take ownership of it. So we're very keen to find an alternative use for this building. The last government brought in flexible permitted development rights, which allows landowners to do just that. It's a nationwide right to use buildings within different uses, all fall within use class E. And the government's very clear that you have to have very, very special circumstances. You have to have a special reason why they shouldn't apply to a particular building. All we are seeking really is flexibility to use this important building in Maidenhead, which has an established long history of commercial use, for the range of uses within the Class E, which gives us an opportunity to find a new use for the building and make sure that it is safeguarded for future generations. It's an important building in Maidenhead, and we do want the opportunity to do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Neil. Can I open this up to the floor? Does anyone wish to speak on this item? Councillor Hunt.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. I think we need clarification on the change of use that we've just heard, which was a full application, planning application. Would it have been possible to put in for the planning application, the variation, section 73, first, and then a month later, go for a planning application? Would that have been possible? And what would be the outcome?
Councillor Hunt. Please.
Yes. In terms of the, if this section 73 is approved, then the property could be used for any use within Class E, and that doesn't preclude then whatever use it goes into coming in with an application for works to the building. So it, you know, whatever use class it is within, whatever use it is within Class E, whether it be office or something else, they may well want to use the space in a different way, and they would then need to come in with a list of building consent application and potentially a planning application, but that wouldn't preclude the current use either. So if it were to be reused as the old D1 use as a medical facility, they may well want to use it differently in any event. So whatever user comes along afterwards is quite likely to want to use the property in a slightly different way to the way it's used now. Does that help?
Can I just come back on that for a little bit more clarification?
Yeah.
So if they get this section 73 variation, and then they decide to have a nursery, so all they need, do they need to apply just to put the car park in? Because it's already there. They're just refurbishing it, aren't they?
So I mean, if this application is permitted, it would remove the restriction, so it could be used for any use. The building could be used for any use within use class E. That would include nurseries without the need for further permission. So the principle of the use, yes, it would allow. What it wouldn't necessarily allow was the external work, so the change of the car parking area to an external play area or things like that without a further permission.
Oh. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other speakers on this one? We've got no motions on the table either at the moment on this.
Yeah. What can I say? I just can't accept this because we're just giving carte blanche again to what we've just refused. And that's the problem. So I can't accept it, and I put a motion forward, proposal, to refuse this.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. Is it worth, for the benefit of the public, running through what Class E actually includes? Just so we know that what we're voting for or against. So I go to Councillor Reeves while you're giving that. So Councillor Reeves.
Yep. I think we have to give due consideration to making good use of vacant properties and trying to encourage the growth of business within the local area as well. This is quite clearly an empty building and an empty space that does and should really be attempted to be utilised. Currently, at the moment, there is a very clear restriction to medical use only, and I think that is actually precluding the potential further use of this property or the consideration for its further use. And the thing is, though, that obviously there's a very broad example, like used car city is very broad. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and read out all the possibilities because there are a lot and it would take me a long time, including creche, day nurseries, like doctors, dry cleaners, gyms, hairdressers. I mean, it goes on, shops, you know, different types of shops and veterinary practice. Sorry? It's listed shoe shops, I mean, travel agencies, there's lots and lots. But I do think that if this was granted that use, I actually take on board what you're saying about actually to make this meet the requirements for a nursery. And to be able to do that, Ofsted will require some form of outside play space. They can't just keep them in. It is a specific requirement. And so actually they would have to come back to us and back to planning for the to be able to develop an outside play area or play space. So for me, I don't think that we're opening, it doesn't feel like we're opening up the floodgates to necessarily a nursery without further consideration because of that and that requirement. And I take the point that you've made about that on board. But what it does do is it does help to encourage the applicant or the owner to actually think again about what potential use they can have for that property and to try and bring it back from its its state that it's currently in and potentially a future even more dilapidated state. So, that's my thoughts on it. I think it doesn't expose us to the preceding one, but it does help to even potentially, maybe they can consider another use that isn't a nursery and isn't a creche, that is more amenable and that wouldn't cause as much noise and traffic and as well. So I think that's my position, and I'd actually be proposing that the change of usage and the variation is to be accepted in line with the recommendation. So that's my motion.
Very good. Yeah, can I just bring Adrian in on that one? Thank you, Councillor Rees, and then we'll go to Helen.
Thank you, councillors. I've just been sitting here having some thoughts about the item in relation to the decision made on the previous item and the discussion from both Councillor Hunt and Councillor Reeves. And I think what I was going to highlight was Section 73 applications are slightly different from a standard planning application in some ways, in that with a standard planning application, we kind of have a blank decision. We either approve subject to conditions or we refuse. With a Section 73 application, the application is an application to remove or vary the condition. So we obviously have the option of removing the condition in its entirety, which is what's being requested, or we also have an option of varying the condition to something else. So we could, as the local planning authority, for example, in light of the previous decision, decide that we didn't feel it was appropriate to completely remove the condition, but it might be appropriate to, for example, vary it to allow all uses within Class C except a nursery. Now, there's a lot of uses within Class E potentially, and precisely what ones are allowed or would be removed might have an impact on things, and I think there should be clarity on that. So I think there are three options that members could consider on this item. I think members could either refuse. We have a motion to refuse. Members could vote for that. Members could approve. We have a motion for that. Or alternatively, an option, if a member were to put it forward, would be that members could defer and we could bring it back with an amended list of uses that might be acceptable, excluding the nursery that members have clearly said they didn't feel was acceptable under the previous item, and bring that back to a subsequent meeting for members to consider. And I think that might find the right balance between not wanting to do something that is contrary to the last decision, wanting to provide some flexibility to secure the use of the listed building above what's there. But I don't think we can do that tonight, because I don't think there would be enough public scrutiny on what that amended condition might look like. So I just wanted to make members aware. I think there's a third option on this one, if that's how I'm reading the debate.
Thank you, Adrian. Can I bring in Councillor Taylor, please?
Thank you, Adrian. I think you actually read my mind at that point, because that was kind of along the lines of what I was about to say. So I would like to table a motion to defer and go down that route, please.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Reeves?
Yeah, that's a much better idea, I think, and I think I would second Councillor Taylor's proposal actually, and support that variation to defer it as well, because yeah, I don't think it's against, there's even a potential they could come back with a smaller nursery proposal. I don't know. So I wouldn't want to completely take, I'm not saying I'm completely taking it off, as a potential, but I think we need to just look at it and discuss it more, because I do think we need to support some sort of variability on its use, because as a medical institution or as a medical use, it seems to have obviously not, it's no longer useful. In that regard, so we need to help support the businesses locally to try and restore that. So I would second it.
Councillor Reeves, I agree. The way it stands at the moment is quite limiting, isn't it? So, can I go to Councillor Hunt, please?
Yes, Madam Chairman, I'm very obviously supportive of businesses and what people can do. There are a lot of constraints in planning. People spend a lot of money trying to get where they are. I'm also very supportive of the listed building and keeping it, in a good condition. And therefore, I would like to withdraw my motion.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. So that leaves one motion on the table. I've got no further speakers on this. Do you want to take that way? Thank you.
Yes, so we only have one motion on the table. It has been proposed by Councillor Taylor, seconded by Councillor Rees, to defer the application until a later date. So the named vote will be for deferral, against deferral, or abstaining from the vote. Councillor Baskerville? For. Councillor Hunt? For. Councillor Martin? For. Councillor Reeves? For. Councillor Taylor? That is unanimous, Chair, that the motion to defer.
Thank you.
Back to the panel.
I think that's what you said, wasn't it, Adrian, that you'd...
Yes, given it was an item that we brought to the panel, we would bring it back for a decision.
Thank you.
So I think as a matter of process, we would notify anyone who's objected when we come back to committee. If there's any amended documents, we will consider notifying people who have objected. So I can't say precisely what we'll do in the public meeting, not knowing precisely who's commented or what discussions lead to, but I will make sure we look into it and try and notify people. So
you always have 3 minutes to speak on any meeting that's brought to the committee if you apply. This isn't actually a forum for the public response. This is really just for the committee.
I'd like to know what happens about the potential for the issue of university interest.
Excuse me, but I just did say this is just for the committee to speak. Could you email?
If you asked at the beginning if anyone got pecuniary interest, no one said a word.
The Constitution also says that I can allow you to speak when I ask you to, so please, could you respect that? Thank you. Before I move on to the next item, we need to grab Councillor Douglas and Councillor Singh. You're more than welcome to stay for the next agenda item, although if you wish to leave, that's also fine. So whatever you want to do. Yeah, just we'll take a little break while we do that. Thank you, everyone. So that brings me on to what's currently on the agenda as agenda item number 5. Excuse me, are you ready? So we're on agenda, which is currently on the agenda, well, agenda item 5. Berries Road, Cookham. So if I could hand to Louise to do her presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This is an application for a 2-storey front extension, 2-storey side extension, single-storey rear extension with balcony above, garage conversion with new roof, new pergola, fence and gates, and alteration to fenestration following demolition of existing elements. The property itself is a 2-storey dwelling of 20th century construction, detached with a large space around it. Sorry, this is my mouse, there we go. This is the site here. As you can see, it's set in spacious grounds, as are the adjoining properties to the north, Whitegates, and the property to the south, Woodlands. This is the existing footprint of the property. We can see here that it's got a double garage to the front and already has a slight projection at the front with 2 side bays. This is the first floor here. On this one, this is the proposed drawing. We can see the rear balcony line here. It has a screening wall and glass partition to the side, and the property to the north, Whitegates, is angled obliquely, but the purpose of the screen is to prevent overlooking to any part of Whitegates from the side. The distance from the balcony to the adjoining property to the south, Woodlands, is at its closest point 20 metres, and there are intervening existing windows here at first floor level, but closer to that and still have overlooking. So the view from officers is that the overlooking would be no worse than the existing situation, given that there are existing residential windows that are closer, and the balcony itself is 20 metres at the very closest point. This is showing the front elevation. I'll run through briefly where the extensions are. There is a 2-storey front extension here, which will project a further 1.2 metres. It maintains the original bay frontage here with the gable end. The existing double garage here would become living space with 2 windows to the front and a parapet set behind a hit roof. Sitting behind the garage itself is proposed a 2-storey rear extension. The rear extension will be set back by around 2 metres, and it's set down from the roof, the main roof here. It's set down by approximately 0.5 metres. The purpose of doing this is to ensure it would appear subservient to the original dwelling. We have a side of elevation here. This is the side of the garage that would become residential space. The 2-storey side extension is here, and this is the area with the screening that is the balcony. So as you can see, the lower part is a wall, the upper part is metal and glass balcony. So it would provide obscure glazing so that they wouldn't be overlooking to the neighbouring property, but it would still allow light to go through on both ways. Rear elevation. The rear elevation here shows some changes to the fenestration, which has undergone quite a lot of discussion with the conservation officer, who is now satisfied with the proposal, highlighting again the balcony area here and some of the changes to the fenestration here, which again have all been agreed. And this is the other side elevation with full height window here, but no other windows proposed in that elevation at first floor level. And here we can see the existing dwelling with the front projecting double garage. As you can see, this is the gable area that would be extended. The proposed window replacements would reflect the existing bay features here, but in metal material. This is the rear elevation of the property. As you can see, there are already doors in the rear elevation here and here. I'll move on to the next slide, which I can show where the balcony would go. But what I wanted to highlight here is the neighbouring property to the south already has quite substantial rear extensions at ground floor level, which you can just see the outline here. And there is quite a bit of foliage along the boundary line. Moving on to another angle of the rear elevation, the balcony would be in a similar location to here. So it's some distance from the property to the south, which is Woodlands. This is the property, White Gates to the north, but difficult to see because of the trees, but it is at an oblique angle, and there would be a screen to prevent overlooking in any event to that property. Some front elevations. This is the front elevation of the application property, so you can see the visibility from the street, and this is the adjacent property, White Gates. Moving across again, this is again trying to get the best view you can from the street into the application site. As you can see, there's a lot of verdant growth along the frontage of these properties, and that forms part of its primary character in the conservation area. This is the property to the south. This is Woodlands. As you can see, Woodlands again is of modern appearance. The application site itself is more neoclassical in its proportions, but this one is more modern and has been extended as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Louise. Before I open this up to the floor, we have two speakers on this. Can I first call up, excuse if I say this wrong, Paul Strzelecki? Please feel free to correct me on that one as well. Once you're ready, you have 3 minutes. You have to.
I live in Woodlands, the southerly neighbour of Triboges on a private road in the conservation area. I'm acutely aware of the privilege of our large plots and the privacy having been brought up on a council estate. As co-founder of Cookham's Footprint, voluntarily advising residents on carbon reduction, I welcomed, in general, the upgrade plans to Triboges fabric. But I would object to a first floor terrace on privacy grounds. I did so on the first application last year. Extensive objections led to withdrawal. I've objected to this pre-app advice application, still featuring the terrace, no change in recent amended plans, which was not officially consulted on with me, still with views over my garden and patio. Southerly facing patio doors, not windows as described. The Juliet balconies are now dealt with by the Conservation Officer's post-app issues. The elephant in the room is the first floor terrace. I've submitted photographs and a surveyed view. There is 50 to 70% seasonally dependent rear viewability, 10 to 15% more if my pittosporum continues to die. Not the agent planning nor anyone else has refuted my evidence. We are retired in our garden most days. Potentially being watched from a terrace is unreasonable, even from decent people, which the applicants are. I brought my home, including a balcony and north-facing windows from a generation back approval standards. I removed them, both. I did not want to see or be seen by the prior Triboges neighbour, and nor did he. And I retained the privacy screen, even though there was no outside first floor access. I value privacy. The response, a photo taken from the wrong height, referring to splay lines. My constant response is the patio areas and the garden that is viewable. Splay lines are a diversion. There is no additional utility from the proposed terrace. The light and the owned garden views are identical to those of the lower patio. I disagree with the planner's report 1016 that it would not be materially worse than the existing and established situation, meaning setback windows. In the morning, you glance through your bedroom window, check the weather and get on with your day. A terrace is a destination to stand, sit, drink coffee and view. Why do you pay more for a hotel room with a balcony? Because you dwell and see more. Distances are cited. I counted the borough-wide design guide recognises in the same clause that they may not always apply. And it's 1.6 metres in front of my first floor build and 18 metres along, not behind. But it comes down to this. QP3 NPPF derivation requires that development, quote, has no unacceptable effect on amenities enjoyed by the occupants of adjoining properties in terms of privacy, light, or disturbance. Cookham VDS 612 and 69A requires no impact on reasonable amenity. And 812 of the Borough-wide Design Guide confirms developments having adverse effect on privacy of neighbouring properties will be resisted. Please relook at the photos and apply the policies with your judgment and consider refusing the application as it stands. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. I now call Nick Hutsteiner to speak, please. Thank you. Thank you. You have 3 minutes when you're ready.
Okay. Members and chair of the committee, good evening. My name is Nick Hutsteiner of HA Architects. I'm the project architect for this scheme. And I've been asked to speak tonight specifically to address and hopefully alleviate the concerns expressed by the neighbour, Mr. Streletsky of Woodlands, to the south of Triboges. The planning officer's report explains very well that this scheme has undergone, thorough wetting over the last 9 months. We worked with 2 sets of planning and conservation officers during this time, including seeking pre-application advice, and developed jointly a proposal that does not cause any harm to the conservation area or neighbouring properties. In fact, it will bring the building up to modern standards and positively contribute to the setting in Barry's Road. The application received 10 letters of support from local residents and neighbours, and the only remaining objection being from Woodlands in relation to perceived loss of amenity and privacy, concerning mostly the proposed south-facing patio doors on the ground floor and the first floor balcony on the roof of the extension. Now, privacy can be a subjective matter, and there are guidelines and recommended distances that we can follow to assess the impact on privacy. For example, the Borough-wide Design Guide, which states that, quote, a minimum distance of 20 meters is this council's generally accepted guideline for there to be no material loss of privacy between the rear of a 2-story buildings directly facing each other. For 2-story rear-to-side relationships, it may be possible to reduce the separation distance to 15 meters, unquote. Now, Triboges and Woodlands are not set back-to-back. They don't face each other. They're side-by-side on very large plots, and the proposed rear extension would be set back 1.6 meters behind Woodlands on rear extension.
1 minute remaining.
The proposed south-facing patio doors open onto a terrace, and the distance from these doors to the windowless flank wall of Woodlands are 16 meters. And the closest, the first floor balcony, would be more than 20 meters from Woodlands, again, the side wall without any windows. So the proposed balcony is only accessible from the first floor master bedroom. It's a private space, it's not an entertainment space, and it would not be used as such. In a row of buildings next to each other with large rear gardens, like those on Barry's Road, a certain amount of overlooking exists and will always exist between rear windows and gardens. But as the officer's report concludes, the proposals would not result in a direct loss of privacy, and it would not be worse than the existing established situation, having windows overlooking neighbouring gardens. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I'll open this up to the floor. Anyone would like to speak? Just press your button. Anyone want to?
Thank you. Yeah, look, I'll open this up. I'll tell you where I am. I can't see much wrong with it, really, to be honest with you. This is a house extension. I've seen the road. It's a lot, predominantly large detached family homes in that area. I do understand there is some harm with this balcony, but the balcony is some distance away from the neighbouring property. it's been screened. There are a lot of, from the images in the that we've seen, that there's a lot of trees, there's a lot of screening around the site. You know, to be honest with you, this is something that I'd sort of expect to see in that area, an extension for family home. It's been modernised. The level of harm that's going to be attributed from this balcony, it is coming off a bedroom, so I can't see really too much wrong. And so look, I'm willing to listen to other people, but you know, I'm willing to go with officer's recommendation on this one. I'm happy to propose the motion if somebody's willing to back it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Singh. Can I bring in Councillor Rees, please?
Thank you very much. One thing I wanted to look at is one of the items that was brought up by the public speaker was around the south-facing patio doors, and it talks about the loss of amenity. Actually talks about through noise. I can't see that there would in my mind be no impact on the privacy from those. They're existing, whether they're windows or doors. There's no diversion in actually the field of view from there. The fact that you can open them to a kitchen, or I think they said potentially a proposed gym, to me doesn't seem to warrant any indication of an impact from a noise perspective either. Many houses have got bifold doors that open onto their kitchens, and that is the nature of like modern living as well. So I can't see that could be considered as one of the reasons to reject this particular application. The balcony seems to be the main issue from my perspective here, in considering whether it has additional privacy, reduction in privacy from the window. The speaker mentioned about just briefly looking at it and getting on with your day. I mean, I know from my experience, and I've seen my wife do it often, she'll quite often just open the window and just lean against the window and look out of it for, you know, minutes on end, potentially even half an hour, because she's enjoying the view. So I think that the window would potentially currently still provide a similar amount of time that somebody would sit on a balcony. I get that probably they would sit on the balcony for longer, but if the theory is still the same, they would go out there for a similar amount of time as they could potentially be leaning out, you know, or out of a window and looking. So that's really where a lot of my consideration lies, and I'm just trying to think about whether that actually imposes additional issue around the privacy. It certainly doesn't for the other neighbouring property because of the privacy screen that has been proposed on that side. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rees. Councillor Douglas?
Thank you very much, Chair. There have been a lot of conservation area concerns that have been addressed during the process, which is great to see. It seems listening to the speakers that the only real outstanding concern is the harm from the loss of privacy, and obviously, you know, there is some harm there, but I think the loss is minor enough that I'm happy personally that the application is well within policy. So I'm going to say I'm happy to second Councillor Singh's motion.
Thank you, Councillor Douglas. Councillor Baskerville?
Yes, looking at the drawings and the pictures that were put up, it looks to me that in the pictures there's a lot more foliage on the boundary than they were shown in the diagrams, because the trees on the diagrams were quite sparse, whereas on the actual pictures they were actually quite lush. I mean, obviously trees shed their leaves this time of year, so that can be affected. But when people are out in their gardens, a lot of the time it'll be in the summertime when this screen would be there. I was just wondering if we could just look at those pictures again, so we get a flavour of the sort of screen there is for the neighbours, because I think that might help give people a better idea of what's being proposed, and also what the potential problem could be.
Is it these photos you were looking for?
Yeah.
These are this is with the adjoining property at Woodlands here. And if I go down.
I mean, there's no proposal, for instance, to remove the trees, for instance. I mean, the trees will stay, won't they?
There's no proposals for works to those trees, to my knowledge, no.
So there is quite a significant screen of, even with the proposed work to be done, in terms of overlooking. I'm just wondering, if people just look at that for a while and just fix in their own minds what the actual issues are, and whether it could be an actual overlooking and the rest of it. I think it's worth tarrying on that picture for a moment, just to bear in mind what the main issue is.
In the meantime, can I bring in Councillor Reeves?
I think it's been really useful. Actually, I was looking at that because the field of view from, I think there was another photograph, so but I'm considering this at the moment. The current view, if the single extension comes of the neighbouring property to where I see it on this picture, which is right there, then I'm assuming it goes across, but I don't have the plans obviously of that property, but then it would be reasonable to expect that any patio would be starting from that point outwards, and then the rest of the garden. So in my view, the existing windows that are already there already have some form of view into that garden and to that potential patio area. And so by adding that, can we see the next, I think it was the next photo where the potential balcony will be positioned? And it's set back from the current line in the plans, or is it equal? It'll be level, right?
It's roughly in line. I think it's slightly.
Right.
Yes, I think it's in line with this one here.
With the one that's set back from the additional gable that's sticking out.
I think so. I can go back and check the floor plan if you want to see.
If you could just show me the rear elevation again, please, I'll have in mind this picture. That would be useful.
Sorry, which way am I going?
Yeah, if you
there we
can
go,
go back,
that's the one. Yes, here we go. It's slightly, this is the existing window here that we saw. Right. And then this is the new extension here, which is on the side of that. So that window exists. So
which levels out with it.
So does that one. And then this is the new part here. So it's
okay, so it is slightly forward.
Roughly in line with the projection here. Yes. In the middle that already exists. So I can go see if I can go back to those photographs, and you maybe.
But it is coming out further.
Not by very much.
Where's the rear elevation? Yeah, no, the other rear elevation, that one, please. Yeah.
There we go. We're going through it. Here we go. So if I go back to this slide, it comes out about as the same as this one here.
Yeah. Can I see the actual plan, please? Not the photo. Yes. You keep skipping past the one that I wanted to see, which is the rear elevation. That's the one. Thank you. Can we just pause? No. Thank you. Fingers off. Thank you. Okay. And then can you go to the one that was the side? Okay. Yeah, it's hard to tell where it's aligned, but okay. I mean, to me, yeah, it doesn't look like it's going to come out much further than the existing middle gable, if you see what I mean. And so therefore it won't really bring it further forward as a viewing, a site view from the existing window that's in the middle gable. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to speak on this? We've got one motion on the table so far, which is proposal to permit. So anybody else who wants to say anything before we go ahead to the vote? No.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so we do have a motion on the table. It is to grant planning permission with the conditions listed in section 13 of the report, which is with officer recommendation, proposed by Councillor Gurjsingh and seconded by Councillor Douglas. I will now take a name vote whether officers are for, whether members are for grant permission, against grant permission, or abstaining from the vote. Councillor Baskerville. Councillor Douglas. Councillor Hunt. Councillor Martin.
For.
Councillor Reeves. Councillor Gurjsingh. For. Councillor Taylor. That is unanimous, Chair, that plan permission be granted.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Those in the public gallery, you don't have to stay for the rest of the meeting. If you want to leave, then you're more than welcome to do so. Thank you. Thank you. Let's bring the minutes in now.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Officially.
Thank you. Normally we'd be going on to the next agenda item, which would be the appeals, but we haven't officially confirmed the minutes from the meeting of 18th of July 2024. So just for clarity, are we happy with those, with the minutes, as there's a lot of to and fro at the beginning of the meeting? Are we all happy? Thank you. And the final agenda item is the planning appeals received. Are we happy with the report on those? All happy? Thank you.